Good morning everybody, hope you're well. I'm doing a short video today on boundaries and needs and how they're interlinked and why we need them. So constantly I come across people who don't know what their boundaries are or what their needs are, and that's fine. I was one of those people too, and I didn't really realise that we have needs or need boundaries put in place to protect our needs until I went through several things in life that made me kind of wake up to even recognising that I didn't know what my needs were, and then needing to protect my needs, which is boundaries. I always say with boundaries, no two people should really have the same list of boundaries, because I think they're meant to be really authentic and very individual, very about you. Now, it doesn't mean you won't have some of the same boundaries as other people. Of course, you probably will. But there's something about how do you set up your boundaries, and people typically don't know how to, and that's completely understandable. I think sitting down and know what your needs are is important. So the first question to ask yourself would be, do I even know what my needs are? If you don't, it's time to get writing an inventory of what are my needs, what's good for me, what makes me feel good, what do I need from others, what do I expect from others, what do I need in return, what isn't okay for me. When you look at those needs, then you can put in boundaries so that you know when to say no, that's not all right, or you know when to step away, because we can go through life without boundaries and we can get very hurt for it. So typically people who are very empathic may struggle with boundaries. I certainly did, because I felt to put in a boundary towards people was being mean, was being selfish, was being out of order. But actually what I was doing was I was giving every part of me to people and not conserving anything for myself, which is my needs, to keep my own energy, only give a little bit away. But also I didn't know how to protect my own needs because I didn't know my needs were there. So I would give everything and then wonder why I'd be emotionally and physically completely drained, or I could get resentful that I've given so much and don't get anything in return. Well, my boundaries weren't there to protect that. So now I'll only give a small amount of myself to any person. I'll decide whether I want to give any part of myself to a person that day, and I'll decide how long for. Now, I know we can't all be robotic and go about life sort of processing in that way every interaction we have, but when we know what our needs are, we can then sort of put in place things where we don't get walked all over, or we don't get taken advantage of, or we don't get completely drained. And sometimes we need to assert our boundaries a bit more with people who may not have, you could call it logic or sense to realise when they're taking too much from you, or they're putting on you. Maybe they're not reading your energy, maybe they're not sensing it. And that's just where they're at. But remember, boundaries means that you're setting up certain rules that are yours, that you're teaching people how to treat you. And you're teaching people that you are worthy enough to yourself of protecting yourself, and that you won't give every last morsel of your every being to anyone and everyone. Boundaries also allow us to move into connections and situations with new people, knowing whether it's okay or not for us. We kind of sense it from the start. So knowing what our needs are is really important, because if we don't know what our needs are, how can we expect others to meet our needs? And how can we know when we've got certain needs that we need to meet for ourselves, or that it's okay to expect something from someone else towards meeting those needs? So your needs are really what's good for you, what isn't good for you, what's your downtime, what's your rest time, what makes you happy, what aren't you doing for yourself? Are you looking after yourself well? These are all our needs, and then we put in the boundaries to protect those. But you can't have boundaries without knowing what your needs are. Just saying.